Good morning. Welcome to this episode of Shields and Arrows. My name is Mark Baze. I'm a preacher, pastor at a small church in Oklahoma. Now, why would you care to listen to me? I don't know, but, we take a pretty unique approach to the Bible, I would say, unfortunately unique. Whereas so much of standard evangelicalism of today is going to essentially try to make application in every passage of the Bible and look for Jesus on every page, because their view is that's the ultimate picture, the story that all the Bible's pointing towards, how Jesus has come, and now the church is the New Testament fulfillment of the promises that you read in the Old. We look at the Bible and we say, hold on, if we follow the actual biblical account, that's not what we find. That Israel is not a type or a picture or a foreshadow of the body of Christ, of the church. That the promises made to Israel are actually not yet fulfilled. The promises of the kingdom and the covenant, it's not fulfilled ultimately in us. That is a future day. So we take 2 Timothy 2:15 to be a good verse that is a good way to sum up our view that we believe that we need to study to show ourselves approved unto God, workmen that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So we take a very contextual approach to Bible study, more so than most. We are willing to ask the hard questions and take the hard positions and consider the possibility that maybe the earthly ministry of Christ was, guess what, not to the Gentiles, to the Samaritans, but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because He was fulfilling promises made to Israel. And it's only after the work of Christ that there's this new opportunity for people to enter into a relationship, I'll use that term, or be reconciled unto God outside of Israel, outside of the covenants, the law, all those things. So I encourage you, hopefully you can follow along and enjoy the show. Now today, I've been pretty heavy on theology this week. I've been pretty light on politics. We've been pretty light on politics for quite a bit. I'm going to talk about the fact that we are about to be unburdened by what has been, being the Biden presidency, Kamala Harris being the vice president. I just want to reflect, and I want to think about what he has accomplished as president, or what I should say, the mess that he has made as president. And so with that, let's hop in the DeLorean. Let's go back and just consider how things have gone with President Joseph Biden. Now, I'll remind you, when he went into office, he was elected under some, let's just say, unprecedented circumstances. The fact that all the voting rules were changed leading up to the election, in which you had all these massive mail-in ballots. And the validity of some of those ballots were certainly questionable. We'll just put it that way. I know you're not supposed to say it. If we get kicked off of YouTube, I am going live on Worshify, so you can go over there. But Biden enters office. A lot of people are saying, hey, hold on, that was kind of weird how everything played out. We have some questions, concerns, and they just told you pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And he has somewhat high approval rating. Now, when I say somewhat and I say high approval rating, that is, we're believing, which is probably a grave mistake, that the mainstream media has any kind of credibility. But what we were told is, hey, yeah, people generally liked him. He had something, I don't know, in the what was Biden's January 2021 approval rating. Let's just see what they're claiming it is. Not that I entirely believe what they're going to say. Let's see if Gallup will tell me. So back in January of 2021, Biden had an approval rating of 57%. Not bad. I mean, especially considering it's a pretty divided country. Half the country's not going to like you. So to be nearly 60% approval rating in today's time, quite impressive, right? At least that's what they told us his approval rating was. Now, that's his job approval, I guess I should say. President Biden's job approval. how he's done so far. That's just overall, not putting into average of anything else. To give you an idea, Donald Trump's approval rating, let's see what his approval rating was when he entered office. Trump's 2016 or January 2017 approval rating. And once again, I don't know how accurate this is going to be. We're having to trust the media, to be honest. So Trump's approval rating in January of 2017 was 45%. So a 12-point difference between Joseph Biden and Donald Trump, Orange Hitler, as they like to call him. Now, things went downhill pretty south, or went south pretty quickly. First of all, one thing that Biden did is he shut down the Keystone Pipeline. That is the pipeline running from Canada down into the United States. He almost did that immediately. And the second he got into office, he revoked the permit. This was in, before the summer of 2021. But very interestingly, that same year, you know what he did do? Is he greenlit the Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Russia to Germany. So Keystone Pipeline from Canada to the United States, we're going to revoke that permit, but we're going to open up and give the green light, the floodgates for Russia to provide Germany with all of its oil, natural gas. Quite an amazing thing. Now, the next thing that Biden did when he was in office is he really heavily pushed the COVID vaccine mandates. And he proposed the policy that any company, corporation, business with 80 or more employees would be, by law, mandated to have all those employees vaccinated. Now, this was taken to, they were sued, taken to the courts, and the courts won. Biden was not able to carry it out. But that was not before many government employees were fired, as well as members of the military were fired. They were unable to serve if they refused to take the COVID vaccine, the Fauci owie. And so don't forget that, how hard that was pressed. A lot of pressure was put on people to get the COVID vaccine. Now, as we continue to move forward, his supposed approval ratings, once again, we're assuming that they're being transparent and clear for us, remain somewhat steady. Nothing took a major turn until we got to the summer. And that's when things went very bad for Joseph Biden. And I would even say that's probably when his presidency ended. Joe Biden's presidency was essentially over the first year. Either he was not going to win his reelection bid, or the Democrats were going to get rid of him for the next election. So everything went south, obviously, with the horrible handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal. And maybe Joe Biden could have put a Band-Aid on the situation. Maybe he could have made things a little bit better, except for the fact that he refused to take responsibility for the soldiers that lost their lives. I'll remind you, 13 soldiers were killed in a suicide bombing at the air base. Was it Bagram? One of the major air bases, as they were getting people out. And of course, you had the horrendous pictures of people clinging to the wheel wells of planes as they were taking off. And we left Americans behind. We left some Afghanistan people who were of great help and were aligned with us. We just left all those people to be killed, essentially. And our service men, and I believe some women, which you know my feelings about that. Women should not be in any combat roles. But with that being said, they return home in their coffins, and Biden is on the tarmac as they're being wheeled across, and he checks his watch because he just can't be bothered. He is not happy that he's getting a bad press showing. If Biden could have owned up to it, maybe he could have helped things, but he did not do it. One of the amazing things is he bragged. He bragged just the other day in one of his closing speeches, looking forward to the day when we don't hear that man give a speech again. He bragged about bringing the servicemen and women home. He just left out the fact that they were in body bags when he did so. And the families were very outspoken against Biden's handling, and rightly so, blaming his terrible handling of it. And yet Biden took no responsibility. He ignored the crying mothers and ignored the mourning fathers. Now, I focus on the loss of life because that absolutely matters, but do not forget, we left hundreds of thousands, if not no, that's probably way off. Millions, if not even $1 billion worth of military equipment. Some of you may actually have the number and you can tell me how much it was. We had pictures of Afghanistan freedom fighters, terrorists, walking around in American multicam, carrying M4s, wearing our Team Wendy or Ops Corps ballistic helmets, as well as running dual tube PVS 31 night vision. An absolute disgrace, humiliating. Instead of bringing all that equipment back with us, instead of destroying that equipment, we let them just take it. And what's amazing to me is we've said it is okay for these terrorists to be in the hands of select fire, military equipment and weapons, body armor, you name it. And yet Joe Biden spent quite a bit of his presidential time in office wanting to take the rights away from American citizens to own firearms and to restrict the ability to have body armor. Amazing, amazing things. And that is where $7 billion, see, I was trying to be conservative. I'm conservative all the time. $7 billion, according to Luke. $7 billion in military equipment. What an absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. So I'm thankful for y'all because y'all have you are able to help me get the accurate picture there. Billions and billions. Now, moving on from there. That is when Joe Biden's presidency was essentially over. People were fed up because Joe Biden campaigned as grandpa. He was old grandpa, Uncle Joe. He was just a nice guy. He was a family guy. He was from, look, Jack, I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I was a lifeguard, and the kids would rub my leg hair. Yes, Joe Biden basically said those exact words. Now, he moving on. The mask was removed and people saw him for what he was. He was a sorry politician. That's what he was. Joe Biden was not in this thing to restore dignity and decency to the American people. He was not there to mend the wounds that were caused by Donald Trump. What wounds, I don't know. Certainly not in our economy, certainly not in our foreign affairs, certainly not in our respect on a global stage. But regardless, he was going to mend wounds. He was going to fix things. The adults were back in charge. And when he checked his watch, and when the mothers were crying, and he ignored them, people realized that he is nothing but a nasty old man. That's what they realized. And the curtain was moved, and people no longer supported him, and his approval ratings plummeted, and they never recovered. Just look, you can see it right here. Here is the Gallup job approval rating. Starts out doing somewhat well, 57, 57, 54, 56. And then he starts implementing the Afghanistan withdrawal, and things absolutely plummet. And he never recovers. The highest he ever gets back up to is like 2020 of August, or 2022 of August. And I think that was, or July, somewhere around in there. And that was honestly when I think Trump was in the news for, being raided at Mar-a-Lago and everything else. And so it just made Biden appear to look better by comparison. Now, that is not the only thing. As if the loss of life in Afghanistan, as if the loss of billions of dollars in military equipment wasn't enough, we showed our neck. The American people elected this man who promised to keep Putin in line. He was going to be hard on China, whereas Trump was playing pals with dictators and everything else. Joe Biden displayed weakness. And in his display of weakness, Russia saw an opportunity. They saw the man that oversaw the withdrawal of Afghanistan, leaving Americans behind, allowing servicemen and women to be murdered, and allowing all that military equipment to be taken over by terrorists. Putin knew that if he ever wanted to invade Ukraine, he had to go now. And he did. So he invaded Ukraine. And Biden somehow did not get blamed. Somehow, some way, Biden was able to avoid all the blame. Quite an amazing feat. And nobody made the connection that it was Biden's weak handling of Afghanistan and foreign affairs that led to all of this. And then what does Biden do? He gets us in a proxy war, and we are sending billions and billions and billions, and it may be in the hundreds of billions by this point. I have no clue how much we spent on this war, and what progress have we made? It's been a stalemate. Russia made some early ground, and now it's basically become a stalemate. And it doesn't look like there's any end in sight. Well, now looks like there's going to be some end in sight because Trump is going to get back in office. But there was going to be no end to that war. People were dying on both sides. Now, President Trump was ridiculed for this when he said, "I want people to stop dying." I'm not saying you should do this, but I am saying that the information and videos are out there. I have seen actual footage of combat in that war. Just it's the way it is now. People have cameras, there's drones. It's awful. It's awful. Men are dying on both sides. And I know that they're Russians and we're supposed to think that they're horrible and evil. They're just doing what their government's telling them to do. I think Trump's call to stop the dying, to stop the killing, is a good call. Now, sometimes you stop the dying and the killing by winning the war. Sure, absolutely. You've got to win the war to stop the fighting. But you've got to go do it. You've got to go get it done. You've got to go get it done. If that is what you have to do, then do it. Do not sit back and give just enough money to where more Ukrainians can go out and get some bullets in their guns to go fight and die another day. America has lost any sense of winning. We just have these forever wars, and we don't ever just go get it done. Go after them hard with it. Like if we are going to really do this thing, then we should fund Ukraine enough to where the war ends next week. and it's over. But no, Biden was insistent upon giving them just enough, for whatever reason, to keep this stalemate war going on indefinitely. Now, that's not the only global conflict that took place. Don't forget that China started getting very aggressive around Taiwan, remains very aggressive around Taiwan. The Chinese people want, or government anyways, wants to take Taiwan. It's amazing they haven't. Israel and Hamas are now at war. Hamas felt emboldened that Biden's not going to really back Israel all that much. So guess what we can do? We'll go in and we'll murder 1,200 Israeli citizens and Americans, people that are just visiting, whatever, and they horrible terrorist, absolute filth, murder these innocent people. And Biden, instead of him saying, okay, Israel, go get it done, get it over with, defeat Hamas, and let's finish this thing, what does he do? He sends aid to both sides. He gives aid and resources to Hamas to where they just take it from the people to supply their soldiers, using the money to build tunnels, probably from money that Biden also gave to Iran. And then furthermore, he gives Israel like some defensive stuff, but then says, hey, don't get too rough. And so guess what? Now a war has been going on where people on both sides, Palestinians, Israel, they're all dying. Why can't we just get the fighting over with? Just get it done. But no, Biden's terrible mishandling has led to suffering for many people in many countries on a global stage. How sad, how pathetic. Now, that doesn't stop there. Biden destroyed our border security. He encouraged people to come to the border. And he cut the knees off of our ICE and Border Patrol agents. Remember the Border Patrol agent on a horse? Because guess what? You can't just drive everywhere in a pickup truck, and neither can you just drive everywhere in a four-wheeler. If you've ever tried to drive on a four-wheeler across a pasture, you may have found yourself flipped over and in a ditch, because four-wheelers are not the best way to travel. Dirt bikes are a little bit better, but you know what's better than anything else? A horse. So you know what? Horses are excellent for patrolling that rough country. And there was claims that this rider, this Border Patrol agent was whipping these illegal aliens trying to enter into our country illegally, breaking the law, even though we have a lot of pictures and videos, and none of the sort happened. And yet he decides we're going to remove all of our horsemen from the Border Patrol. And now the cartel is trafficking children and drugs and guns across the border, and it's an absolute dumpster fire in the very definition. And yet he wants to claim that he's done so much work, and if the GOP would have just agreed to that awful border bill, which would have abolished the actual border security laws that were on the books, then everything would have been fixed. Don't believe your lying eyes. So destroying the security of our border. Not only that, instead of uniting the country, he labeled half of the country a domestic threat. Do not forget Joe Biden's awful, horrible speech, vicious speech that took place in front of Independence Hall. I just want to show you that picture. I want you to remember this kind of imagery. This is the image that you can see right here from this speech that Joe Biden gave in front of Independence Hall. It was it was mean-spirited. There's a ton of different pictures that we could use. But here's this one right here. Obviously, you have the smaller one over here to the left with his fists in the air. So in front of a blood-red Independence Hall, we have this man getting up and declaring that anybody who supports MAGA, you are a MAGA extremist and you are a threat. I'll remind you, he completely weaponized all of his departments, all of his agencies. We were getting reports of the FBI analysis of the greatest threats to national security, and it was not radical Muslim terrorism. It was not the threat to the illegal aliens crossing our border. You know who the threat was? It was coming from the alt-right, the far-right extremist, white supremacist, Christian nationalists. There was FBI agents going in and conducting surveillance on the Latin Mass at Catholic churches. We were the ones that were labeled the extremist. We were the ones that were labeled the threat, the ones labeled the terrorist. Words such as 1776, the militia, or the Betsy Ross flag were all considered signs and to be equated with domestic terrorism. So all of those supposedly traditional values that America was built upon, give me liberty, give me death, you are the actual threat. They view you as a threat. For pro-lifers thrown in prison for praying outside of abortion clinics. Meanwhile, we have people coming across the border and murdering young women in colleges. What a joke. What an absolute joke. Speaking of the matter of him using the agencies, he weaponized the DOJ against his political rivals, mainly Donald Trump and many of those that helped Trump, who were aides to him. His home, Trump's home, was raided at Mar-a-Lago, where they found classified documents, which a president has quite a bit of authority last time I checked. But regardless, they claimed that he was in big trouble for those classified documents. They trumped up a whole bunch of other ridiculous charges, got his mugshot, getting ready to throw him in prison. And all the meanwhile, then it was found in Biden's garage with his Corvette a whole bunch of classified documents. Classified documents, I'll remind you, from not when he was the president, but the vice president, who does not have as much authority as the president does. But it was all swept under the rug, and it didn't matter. Pay no attention. Furthermore, he pushed the woke agenda in all of our different major institutions. He pushed diversity, equity, and inclusion on the FBI. He pushed diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Secret Service, which is probably why Trump nearly was killed, because we had incompetent, inept directors and overseers responsible in the Secret Service. But not only that, he pushed DEI in the military. So once upon a time where our military commercials were strong, capable men doing strong, capable men things, looking dangerous, being dangerous, jumping out of helicopters, shooting machine guns. Now we had commercials about some girl that's in the military talking about how great that she has two moms. Yeah, Russia was real scared. Putin was real scared. China was real scared. No wonder. And instead of us having men at the helm, we were having cross-dressers put at the helm. The Secretary of Health is an obese man who believes that he's a woman. What was it? One of our, who was the one that was in charge of some, secretary of something who was getting luggage from women at airports and then stealing their clothes? And also we had the one, maybe it was the same guy, dressed in like a weird, I don't even know what they used to, a fetish with a dog. It was weird stuff. And we were told, no, it's completely normal. You're the weird ones because you believe that a baby's a baby and that marriage is between a man and a woman. And you hateful bigot because you don't believe that men can be in women's bathrooms or a man can play in women's sports. And you think it's wrong that we're sending women to die on the front lines? How dare you, you racist, traditional, backwards bigots. Amazing, amazing things. Furthermore, on top of all that, he denied any involvement, or first of all, he denied that Hunter Biden did anything wrong. That's his son. He knows his son. And then yet magically, when all of it comes out that yes, Hunter Biden has done some bad stuff, taking money from Burisma, probably taking money from China as well. He was involved with drugs and prostitutes, as well as having his brother's widow, who was his girlfriend at the time? I don't know. Having her discard of a gun for him, so she threw it in a dumpster near a school. You know, all sorts of amazing, outstanding things. And then Biden denied being involved, taking any money. But of course, we all know. Hunter himself said, be sure to leave 10% for the big guy. Who's the big guy? I don't know. I think we do. Ultimately, then he just had to say, you know what, I'm going to pardon my son. After he said, I'm not going to pardon my son. Now, here's the amazing thing. I've gone through a long, long list. The show's, we're 32 minutes in, and I've mostly just been talking about Joe Biden's absolute debacles as president. And yet, there is so much more. There's so many other things to maybe make I don't know if I should even do this, but the Gospel of John speaks to if every man were a scribe, and every feather a quill, and all of the ocean ink, there would not be enough room to write all the things that Christ did and accomplished during his earthly ministry. We've barely scratched the surface on all the things that Joe Biden has done. And truth to be told, we probably don't even know half of the things that he really did behind the scenes. Now, the frustrating thing is the media is already trying to play rewriting history, just as they did with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was not a good president, and yet he is getting just the most glowing memories and commemorations from the media. Joe Biden will also be getting all of his glowing memories, and he will be treated as the great man who tried to save democracy against the wicked, horrible, terrible Donald Trump. And he was so humble and so self-sacrificing that he stepped down from the presidential race. Yes, his presidency was so successful, he did such a good job that he couldn't even run a second term. Don't forget all the lies about the media saying that Joe Biden was mentally fit, he was capable, he was with it, and then finally when he had that debate with Trump, and we all saw, and there was no denying it, the media pretended as if for a moment they had some clarity and they hadn't been lying to us this whole time, that they were surprised. Joe Biden's presidency did a lot of damage to the liberal, progressive agenda. It showed them for who they really were. The masks were taken off. They were finally caught. And that's why you have Donald Trump about to be sworn in as the 47th, previously 45th, 47th president of these United States. Now, I will say the best thing that Joe Biden did in his presidency, the best thing was selecting Kamala Harris. You know, Joe Biden, he said, I'm going to pick a black woman to be my running mate. Because diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Joe Biden picks Kamala Harris. There was a number of others that he could have picked. He could have done a lot better, probably. Not that there was a ton of great candidates that fit that description. Now, certainly there are some good candidates out there, some women of color. But unfortunately, they were on the right side of the aisle. So Joe Biden couldn't pick them. So he picks this radical from California, Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris's dream from the moment that she was selected was that Joe Biden would, take a long walk off a short pier. And so when Joe Biden finally stepped down in the third act of the race, Kamala Harris stepped in, and boy, was she joy. She was joy, she was vibes, freedom, baby. And then it was exposed that she is just an empty suit, that she's had no original thought, that she has word salad for breakfast every single morning. And people realize that she has no values. She has no actual thoughts inside of her head. And it's just going to be more of Joe Biden, because Kamala Harris said herself she would not change anything from her time as vice president and change any of the decisions that Joe Biden made. And so now, the Lord worketh in mysterious ways. Through Joe Biden's incompetence and Kamala Harris's absolutely terrible personality, Joe Biden has handed over the White House to Donald Trump. He will be sworn in on Monday. And it will be, is it Monday? Yes, I think so. The inauguration. It'll be an amazing thing to see. It'll be an amazing thing to see. Now, I'm optimistic about Trump's presidency. I think he's going to do a lot of good. I think he's learned a lot. It's not going to be perfect. No presidency is, but it is an amazing thing. One thing I do have to add is how hilarious it is that Joe Biden is claiming that it's all thanks to him that there's been some kind of hostage deal made. Now, not that the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas is great, but he is bragging this is what he accomplished, when we all know what actually happened is, and you've done this before, you got in trouble when you were a kid, right? And dad was not home. It was you and mom. Now, mom can be intimidating, don't get me wrong, but you don't want to get a whipping from dad. So instead, you take your whipping from mom before dad gets home. That is essentially what happened. So I'm excited. I'm here for it. Joe Biden's presidency, what a disaster. Watch how the media are going to try to rewrite it. They are going to argue, wow, what a great job he did creating jobs. They're going to forget that COVID is the reason why Joe Biden had such success creating jobs. They're going to ignore the massive inflation. There was absolutely a recession that took place, but they ignored it because we had to all of a sudden redefine what a recession even was. But goodbye, Joe. I hope you enjoy eating your ice cream on the beach while your son Hunter makes another painting. Now, as far as the rest of the things going on in the world, Trump's confirmation hearings are still being carried out for his cabinet. Pete Hegseth, I thought, did a good job. The only thing is, so it's technical, right? You know, the line of the words matters. I believe from a moral position, okay, morally, a woman should not be in combat. That's my convictions, okay? When I see in Scripture, it's the man's job to be the protector, to be the provider. That's our responsibility. Pete Hegseth, he's came out very strongly for my position. But in his confirmation hearing, he said he will support any woman in combat so long as she meets the standards, which will not be made easier, okay? That everybody's going to be held to the same high standard. Maybe that's a way around it. That if you set the standard high enough, it will be something that only men can achieve. Now, I will say, there are some exceptional women out there. Amazing, athletic, strong, capable women. There are women out there who can squat more than I can. There are women out there who can bench press more than I can. They're out there. It's amazing. Women who can run faster than me, run farther than me. Women that can shoot guns better than me. Look at Lena Musilek. She's an amazing shooter. And the conservative, run-of-the-mill conservative, libertarian, things like that, they may say, hey, look, as long as they can pass the same strict test, if they can do this, if they can do everything the man can do, then they can do it. But they have to be able to do it, no watering it down. But then, here's my view, here's my convictions. It doesn't matter if she can do it. It doesn't matter. It's not her job. It's the man's job to do it. And I don't argue from a position of if they can do it, then they should. I argue from a moral position, a biblical right versus wrong position. And those are my convictions. So I hope Pete Hegseth eventually just comes out and is more straightforward and just admits that, yeah, it's against my convictions that a woman should be in combat. I am just telling you right now, I've never been in combat. Never. Never been in the military, not law enforcement. I have family members that have done both. But, from what I understand, you have a mission you've got to accomplish. Now, you want to do everything you can to make sure that your fellow soldier gets out alive. You will do the best you can to save their life. But you have to accomplish the mission. We are wired, we are created, men are, by God to protect women. If a man gets hurt, that's awful, that's terrible, and we will try to help our fallen. But if a woman gets hurt, that will completely change our mentality. Completely. I've told you, my mission as a husband is to keep my wife safe at all times, to protect her, protect our children. That's my mission. That's not the mission of a soldier. The mission of a soldier is not to protect the women and the children. Now, yes, ultimately, that's what they're accomplishing, keeping our national security and everything. But in the moment, if your job is to blow up said airbase, that's your job. You have to be focused on your job, and you don't need the possibility for a woman to be in danger to then be distracted to where you're taking your eyes off of your goal. That's my position. So, I'm not a fan of Pam Bondi. She is not pro Second Amendment enough. She's paid lip service to red flag laws. Sorry about that. So I'm not in approval of her at all. We're just going to have to hold her feet to the fire. If she tries to open her mouth and start suggesting red flag laws, that's where you contact your senators. You contact your representatives, you make a fuss, you scream, you yell, and you let her know and Trump know, we're not doing it. We're not doing it, okay? You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. All right, how's that for politics of the day? I want to close today. I've got an appointment, I've got a meeting I'm going to go to here in just a little bit. I want to close on this comment here from Scott yesterday, talking about... It was kind of in regard to what about people that don't hear the gospel and how people have forgotten from one generation to the next. The grandpa is a deacon. The son grew up going to church, but kind of became a CEO, Christmas, Easter only. And now the grandson hasn't ever stepped foot in a church. Scott says just 100 or so years ago, or just 100 years or so ago, most people had no problem believing in a supernatural world. The realm in which God dwells, so to speak. And this may also be in regard to our physical bodies versus the spiritual world, the realm where heaven is. Modern life has largely taken that away from us. It's difficult now to deny our doubt. We are largely products of the spirit of the age now. This reorganization of human consciousness was an organized, planned operation over many generations. I would agree with that. As right dividers, we guard ourselves from mysticism to a good degree. We are skeptics by nature. We're skeptical of what we hear from the preacher. We're skeptical of what we read in our, study Bibles. Not the Word of God itself, but we're skeptical of the margin notes, right? But there is a spiritual world. Now, how much that has to play with us right now in this immediate moment, I don't think we live in quite such a time of the days of Christ with demons and the possessions, the signs, the wonders, but there is a spiritual realm. And I would go to say maybe at this point in time in which we live, the most significant thing is that there's something beyond. There's more than just the matter and the space that is in front of us, which is what secularism has said, that this is all there is, and you can make yourself whatever you want to be. So your body is yours to cut up and mutilate, and I would even go so far as to say is mark up, whether it's with tattoos or piercings. Do all sorts of stuff to your body. Make it out to be whatever you want, to where you no longer even look like a human. Maybe I could go so far to say is not even in the image of God. No longer having His likeness because you have altered your body so much, mutilated yourself so much. Because we said, it's my body, my choice. If I want to have the baby, I'll have the baby. If I don't want to have the baby, I'll kill the baby. Marriage is nothing more than just my lustful desire for another person, or maybe we have fun together, so I can do that with anybody that I want to, and I can make marriage whatever I want it to be. But that's not what the Bible testifies of, that there is something more beyond just the physical. There is a spiritual, supernatural existence beyond what we can see. And the truth is what we see is quite small. It's quite small, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Here today, gone tomorrow, right? I appreciate that, Scott. I want to read some of your comments, say hi to some of you before I let you go. We've had a great turnout today for today's show. A lot of good interactions. Robert's on with us today. Great to have you. Ken joined us. Dr. Campbell. Myra's on. Ken said, do we want to remedy Biden's presidency? Yeah, or remember. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we just want to forget. Rick's on with us. Rick, always appreciate you. He says those who do not remember history are doomed to repeat it. And Ken just gave us a hearty amen, brother, essentially. Dr. Campbell says, I just bought my husband a cap that says, clean up on aisle 46. He should wear it to church. Luke's on with us, says, he was the one that told me it was $7 billion. Joyce was with us today. Joyce, always appreciate you. Ken says, I wonder if Halliburton is supplying stuff for any of these wars, and if so, how much? Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look at that. We have Neil Headstrong on. I'm going to completely forget about the Biden presidency, and I'm not suffering memory loss. Neil, good to have you. I don't know how often you're on with us, but I appreciate you joining us. If you're still on, if I do know you, I'm so sorry. It's just I try to keep up with all the names. I'm getting better. But Neil, if you haven't joined us really before, comment, let us know where you're from. Nancy's on. Hi, everyone. Been listening while I work, enjoying this recap of the failed Biden years. Oh, my goodness. It's like a bad nightmare. You know those nightmares you think is real, and then you wake up and you're relieved? It's not exactly like that because it was real, but at least you get to wake up and you're relieved that he will no longer be president. Luke says, I think it's only 13 or 14 countries that allow women in active combat roles. I know, it's an amazing thing how we act like this is some universal thing. There's only a handful of countries that allow women public boxing. Now, like I said, I'm all for women training in martial arts. I think women should know how to box and how to do jiu-jitsu and definitely shoot a gun. But publicly watching two women beat each other up, I don't know. Maybe we are desensitized and callous to inappropriate behavior. I don't know. Robert says it's no wonder Lena Musilek is good with a pistol. She's the daughter of the world-famous pistolier, Jerry Musilek. Yeah, Jerry's amazing. And even at his age, he is so fast. At his age, he is so incredibly fast. It's incredible what that man can do. Absolutely amazing. Scott's been on with us today. Scott says, on American presidents, I've lived through all of them since and including Eisenhower. The progression is exactly analogous to the progression of American society. This is why we believe we are quickly moving into prophetic times. Yeah, it's possible. The president does often reflect the society because the people elect them, and it is a weather vane. Maybe the rapture will be here tomorrow. Hopefully before tax season, am I right? And then Scott added, Biden stood before the American people and promoted the mutilation of children and called it gender affirmation care. Yeah, you are right. Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. All right, well, everybody, that's all I've got for you this week. We'll be going live on Sunday with Sunday School as well as our sermon series. We're going to be addressing sin in our dispensation. What is sin in our dispensation? So hopefully you enjoy that. Thank you all for supporting this ministry. Can't tell you how much it means to me. It's a great blessing to get to know all of you excellent people. Take care. Be safe. And we will see you all tomorrow. This has been Shields and Arrows. I'm Pastor Mark Baze.